Hey everybody, welcome to the real United States. And today is a historic day on the entire planet, really. But certainly here in the United States, a day that we're very, very proud of. And it is the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon, the lunar landing, by the Apollo 11 astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, on this day 50 years ago. Now, I'm not going to try in this video and give you a big history lesson. I doubt that there's anything I could add to the dialogue that hasn't already been said today and in the weeks previous. We all know the events. We all know the famous quotes. I'm sure we've all actually by now seen footage of those last 60 seconds where Armstrong is trying to find a level place to land the lunar excursion module, and they're afraid they're going to run out of fuel. I mean, we've all seen this. It's all. But what I want to talk to you about today is more anecdotal. Because I was there, I experienced this. And if you're, I'm going to say 55 or older, then you probably remember exactly where you were and what you were doing 50 years ago today. Because this was a monumental thing for all of humanity. I mean, yes, the Americans did it, and we were very proud to be the first on the moon, and we, won the proverbial space race. But on that day, I got the impression, now, that it didn't matter what nation you lived in or anything else. We as a species had set foot on another astronomical body. And by the way, as a side note, for those of you trolls out there that are going to say it's fake news and it never happened, you'll be deleted and banned from the channel, so don't bother. I'm not going to tolerate it. And all right, so let's move on. It was a monumental thing for humanity. Everybody was glued. I think I heard at the time. And again, this is 50 years ago, so you're going on the memories of what was a 9-year-old boy. It was about a month before my 10th birthday. That something on the order of a billion people, 1 billion people, were watching this event as it unfolded live. So, again, I'm 9 years old. There were only, I believe, I'm not going to look the numbers up, but about 250 million people in America at the time. So to me, the concept of a billion people was just mind-numbing. It was, the population of the whole planet. It wasn't, but, it certainly seemed like it to a little boy. And, everybody was glued to their sets. They showed scenes from different places around the world of people, watching this happen. There's nothing like it before or since that has so riveted the world. I'm not sure if there ever will be. Maybe when we land on Mars or something. But it just galvanized the entire human race in a way that I don't think has ever happened since. And so it was a very deeply moving thing for every one of us that was alive at the time. And it affected those of us who were, in that age group, pre-adolescence, adolescence, and those of us that were in that age group, it affected us very deeply. This was a spectacular year, as I've tried to make out over the last few episodes of On This Day, but I mean, Richard Nixon had just taken office a few weeks earlier, a few months earlier, and we had a new president. Um, we, uh, we were, at a very active time in the Vietnam War. And for those of us that were young men, young American men, this was horrifying. You went to school, you grew up, you turned 18, you went to Vietnam, and you died. That was what we had to look forward to, and it was terrifying. There was the Cold War. Okay, if you don't go to Vietnam and die, somebody's going to nuke you from outer space. It was a horrifying time to be alive. And the civil rights movement was reaching a real zenith. The anti-war protests throughout the country, especially in Washington D.C., of course, were at a fever pitch. There was just a lot of activity and a lot of stress. To have this one thing that was everything about it seemed good. The scientific advancement, the galvanizing of humanity, everything about it seemed good. And so it was a particularly important thing in that period as well, because there was so many things that seemed not so good, that this one thing, this one ray of hope, my God, maybe there's hope for humanity after all, was very moving to a lot of us. For those of you who remember the show Star Trek, the original series, the last episode, the final episode, had aired only weeks before. A couple of months before. All right? And it had been running for 3 years, highly popular show. Affected me personally. This is what I wanted to do, okay? I mean, I wanted to be part of the space program, because I knew on some level that the Apollo program would be defunct by the time I was an adult. We would have moved on to the next thing and the next thing, and in fact we had by the time I reached adulthood. And so I wanted to be a part of this. This was when I decided, it was 69, I decided, I want to be an engineer. At the time, I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. And so it affected my whole life. The lunar landing, the culmination of the space program, affected me for years to come. So I did end up going on and becoming an engineer, and in fact, my first job in engineering as a very young draftsman involved, I was part of the original design crew for the Space Shuttle Enterprise. So I got to watch the Enterprise on Star Trek, and I got to help design it in the very late 70s, early 80s. Late 70s actually. It launched in 81, but I digress. So this was a very moving experience that changed the trajectory of my life and a lot of other young folks for years to come. Beverly and I actually had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Aldrin, the second astronaut to step foot on the moon. And yes, it was Dr. Edwin Aldrin. He had a SCD in astronautics, and delightful chap. I think we met him on 2 occasions actually, and somewhere floating around there's a picture of Beverly and Dr. Aldrin together, which I wish I had so I could have put it up here, but unfortunately it's buried in our stuff right now. I know where it is, I just can't get to it at the moment. So anyway, we had the pleasure of meeting him, and again, this was an incredibly moving experience. Aldrin, also an engineer, his bachelor's degree was in mechanical engineering. A huge influence on my life. This was the sort of work that I wanted to pursue. And so it wasn't just one of those things that I suppose a lot of people watched as, this is a fascinating thing and a fascinating thing for humanity, but maybe I didn't internalize quite as much as I did, or people, right in my age group, like I say, that were, well, like I say, I was almost 10, from 10 to 15, that age group where you're going into high school and college and you're pursuing a career. Those of us that saw these events went, yeah, that's what I want to do. And, you didn't necessarily by this time have to be a test pilot to do it. You could be a PhD or SCD or whatever and go on and pursue a career in as an astronaut. Didn't work out for me. I developed astigmatic myopia and had to wear glasses, and so flight was kind of out of the question for me. There's, so many people that wanted to be in the program, and the opportunities, you had to be pretty healthy, perfect, in order to qualify, and my eyesight would have disqualified me. But still, I got to work in the industry and on a lot of other projects that were aerospace, spacecraft, satellites, missiles, aircraft, things like that. So, and that, went on for quite some time. I sort of missed that in a little way. And, interestingly enough, I'm just kind of rambling here a little bit about these stories of the things in 1969. I mentioned that the last episode of Star Trek had aired a few weeks earlier. And it was filmed in color. Beautiful color, if you've seen it. I saw it in black and white because we had, at the time, an American-made television. Yeah, believe it or not, folks, back in the 60s, televisions were made in the United States. And we had this big, expensive Curtis Mathis console television with the stereo built in it and the whole bit. Black and white. Color television did not become a thing really until the early 60s, early to mid 60s, I want to say. And of course, we had already owned a television prior to it becoming a real popular thing. And my folks weren't going to they weren't early adopters. They weren't going to go, well, I'm trashing that and buying a new color set. That wasn't in their nature. So I watched the moon landing in black and white. And I had watched the episode of Star Trek in black and white. I did not see that episode in color until 7 years later. 1976, I finally got to see it in color. Wow! So, but I still remember we were sitting, the whole family, of course, were sitting there glued to the television, from pretty much the whole series of events, from the time the LEM undocked from the command module until Armstrong got out of that capsule, out of the LEM. We were glued to the set, and there was not a great deal of conversation. We a little chit chat here and there, but every one of us, my mom, my dad, me, my brother. My brother had just graduated high school that previous June, so he'd only been out of high school for 6 weeks or so, and and I'm sure this was the case. If I could go back in time, I think it would be interesting now to go out in the streets, because I imagine they were abandoned. I think everybody was just glued to their TV. There was, certainly here in the United States, I don't think no one was not watching this live. And you got to, I wish I could share with you this mental picture, this big Curtis Mathis black and white picture, and the LEM landing on the moon and all that. It's just, I wish I could share it out of my mind, what it was like, what it looked like. Very different experience from televised things today. Very antique looking. Even the memories seem antiquish. Um, but for a while, I don't know, for the next few days, I think it seemed like there was kind of world peace. I mean, there wasn't. There was still massive conflict in Vietnam, and God only knows where else in the world. But it seemed, for the moment, for a few days until they returned. And it had been we've been sitting on pins and needles for 4 days, folks. They took off on the 16th of July, and it took them 4 days to get to the moon and get in orbit and get in position and everything and get down there on the 20th. So the world had been holding its breath that these guys that we were shooting off 236,000 miles into space were going to be able to get out and stand on the moon and be able to breathe and then get back in and get off the damn moon, reconnect and come back home and still be alive, which they did. But it was a nail biter. The whole thing was a nail biter. Everything about space travel was, and still is, but it was, horrifically dangerous. And I think that whole thing of the danger and the courage it took probably affected a lot of us that were young folks and how we approach future careers as well. Another side note, and I posted this earlier on Facebook, in July of 1969, interestingly enough, I don't know what you'd call it, prophetic song, 2525 was in the top 10 in the United States that month, talking about the future of humanity. And if you listen to that, some of it seems a little frightening today. I don't know what you think about it, but that was the popular song of the day. Believe it, one of the most popular songs of that month, and so that I don't know. Maybe that helps put it in perspective. I say there's not as many of us left as there was not too long ago that remember these events, firsthand. So I'm actually one of the fortunate ones. I almost didn't make it, but I've had quite a few people close to me in the last year who didn't make it to this day to see this event, who would have remembered it fondly, and that's unfortunate. And I miss them dearly, but it is what it is. But like I say, this is for most of you watching this, these are events you heard about on television or read about in history class, but there was a magic about it when you were there, something so gripping and so emotionally visceral that like I say, affected our lives for years, and led me to some career choices for which I am to this day quite proud to have been a part of. Anyway, if this channel is going to talk about things that are uniquely American, I think that this event, or the celebration, the 50th anniversary of this event, is one of the most uniquely American things that there is, because to date, to my knowledge, no other country has set foot on a foreign astronomical body. So we got there first, and to date, we remain unique amongst the peoples of the earth in having made that achievement. And perhaps soon others will join us, and that'd be cool. Get out there and do it. Space is big. There's room for everyone. Anyway, folks, thanks for joining us here in the real United States. I hope you've enjoyed my rambling, reminiscing trip down memory lane about the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing and mankind's first steps on the moon. I just hope you enjoyed it. If you got questions or comments, please leave in the comments section down below. I love hearing from all of you. I realize for many of you who are regulars, it's been a while since we've posted, and I'm sorry about that, but that is the nature of life these days. If you're new here, welcome so much, and I hope that you found this interesting enough that you'll consider picking subscribe to come along for the adventure, because we do have lots more to show you. And as always, folks, thank you for watching.